Hey, everybody. So we're going to give it a few minutes. I got Jack with me today. We want to have this conversation. We just want to give it a few minutes and let some more people get on. Uh, but but man, right? Jack, I yesterday I saw this come through and I just like fell out of my chair. I
Yeah,
just fell out of my chair.
I think it took everybody by surprise. I mean, at first, I didn't believe it at all. I'm thinking, no, this is not happening. This is some
You
type
know,
of
it's
fake
it's
news.
it's not that shocking though that the core. I mean, I think some of these guys have been. I mean, like Clarence Thomas, and some of those that have been there for a little while. And I'm interested to see how Roberts is going to rule on this. But like, I think Alito, as one at least, has been sitting around for a while, to waiting to jump on, and see and blast this. I mean, we're going to get into a little bit of what he wrote in that draft opinion, but what do you think about the fact that it leaked? Like that's where and folks, I see some more people jumping on now, so feel free to jump into the comments. We'll highlight them, we'll talk about it, as we go. So if you want to opine on something that Jack and I are talking about, just go ahead and drop it in the comments. One of us will catch it. But like, what do you think about the fact that it leaked? Like, I looked at that. Like, I have a couple of theories about that because these things don't leak.
Right.
Like drafts don't leak,
It's
but this
never,
one did.
ever happened before.
No. So, like, have you thought about that though? Like, why this one?
Yeah.
Why not that it's not a big case, but
No, look, it, on one hand, why now, right? We're getting ready for midterms, and the Democrats are getting slammed. They're going to get slammed, and now all of
that's
a
one of my
sudden
theories.
there's some kind of uh, rallying issue for Democrats. They can forget about licking their wounds over Biden and get behind this train. And
Yeah.
but I don't know that that really makes sense. It's just that's what occurred to me.
Yeah, no, it occurred to me too. And like that was the first thing that I thought, right? Was like, all right, this is just a rallying cry to try and get Dems. Now, another theory that I have is that, this leaked because they're trying to sway the decision. Because now I don't think they can, right? I don't think they will sway the decision. If we were in the court when Roberts was the deciding vote or Kennedy was the deciding vote, I think that this would have swung things, right? Because those guys care more about how the Supreme Court looks than what the actual Constitution says. But in the end, like, I'm thinking that might be what it is that they're trying to sway, they're trying to figure out they're trying to figure out, all right, what could we do? A last ditch effort, let's before they come out with this ruling, right? Because once they read the final draft, it's done already, right? All
Right.
the protesting in the world ain't gonna matter. So to me, it's like let's leak this final draft, I don't know who did it, but I have to think that it was one of the leftist judges. Like I have
Oh,
to.
yeah,
No one
it's
else has
got to be.
access to this stuff. So
Yeah.
like, like they're not going to give a clerk access to, like that's just not going to happen. So in the end, it had to be one of the justices that leaked this to Politico. And the fact that it was leaked to Politico tells you all you need to know, right? Because I mean that
Right.
you may as well leak it to the Daily Coast, like I mean, I don't know. That's my theory. One of those two things is that one, they're either trying to sway the decision, hoping that they can get a judge to panic because now if they come out with this decision, everyone will have their talking points straight. Everybody's like all of that stuff will be set up to attack them, and they're hoping they can scare one of them into backing out, or like I said, like you said, they're trying to just ramp up what they can from the Democratic base, knowing that this decision was going to probably come down anyway.
Your second hypothesis also, if you take a look at it, what adds further weight to that is what Chuck Schumer had to say. I don't know if you caught that, George, or not.
I didn't know. So I heard this last night, and I was going through the draft, like I was just reading the hell out of the draft like 3 or 4 times. And then, when I got done with it, I kind of went to bed, had to get right to work this morning, but immediately ran to the computer to make sure that I got on
Right,
tonight to have this conversation because it's that big a deal. Like this is when you drop things for it.
right, right. Well,
So
Schumer came
what did he
out.
say?
Schumer came out and he threatened the Supreme Court justices. He said, you don't realize this is an abomination, and you don't understand the ramifications. Something, I don't have him down verbatim, but you don't
Right.
understand the implications and the ramifications of this, and it's going to come back to bite you. I'm paraphrasing, but he said it in a very threatening manner, so much so that I was watching a follow up from Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch, and he said that if the Supreme Court justices want it right now, they could go right after him. They could go file a complaint against him. I know that 17 senators, they've already filed a complaint against Schumer for what he did. But I mean, who threatens Supreme Court justices? I mean, this guy
Yeah. He's done
obviously,
this before, didn't he? Didn't he do this before? I could swear there was just recently a decision where he friggin' came out and said something that people were starting to equate to a threat, like that. It was what it might have been. I'm trying to think of what. There have been quite a few deep issues for these guys recently. But if anybody out there knows, if anybody out there could think of this, I'm almost positive Schumer just were fresh off maybe a year or two ago of him threatening the court on something different, and it was like just speaking in language that sounded, it wasn't like he said "I'll kill you" or anything, but he was like one of those, like watch your back type statements. You know what I mean? And I gotta go look that up. I'll pull it up on a different episode. If nobody knows, if I'm the only one who remembers this, I know he did because I remember doing that. But that's crazy because they do that, right? These people are triggered beyond belief right now, and I want to get into some of what that opinion was. Um, so I took a few excerpts of it, just to kind of to give people an idea of where the courts are coming from because in the end, the reason the left was always so afraid of this, there's different fears from the left and the right. So the right puts in judges that are what we call constructionists, right? And Jack, how many times do like the people on the right worry about what a decision is going to come down to even if there's a majority of so-called conservatives, right? Because the principle is that they go strictly by the book. Like that's what they're put in for,
right,
right? If they turn into a Roberts or a Kennedy or something like that, where they start going off, then it is what it is. They're in for life. But it's selected because at least at the time that they're selected, they were considered to be what's called a constructionist judge, which means you're not putting feeling into it. The document's not a living constitution. It's not a living document. It is what it is. Like you just whatever the letter of the law says, the letter of the law says. And when it comes to conservative rulings, like we have to worry that like there's no technicality in there, that there's no. Whereas like if in the case of like the 73 court, when the left had the courts, they really had nothing to worry about because these people go straight on ideology, like they just raw ideology. So like they'll just go ahead and whereas for us we gotta like, and this is how they ruled. Like this is why the left has always been so scared of Roe v. Wade getting overturned if there were a full house of Supreme Court justices, or at least enough constructionists that the one swaying guy can't be bribed, persuaded, or or blackmailed, right? So like, and that's where we're at. Because if you read his opinion, he blasted the 70. He didn't just like they didn't just overturn it. Like they went at it. He's speaking for everyone in the majority opinion with this. I'll get into it right now. He blasted these people, Jack. Like he wasn't trying to play nice with them. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like let me be professional. It was. I mean, he calls it egregious. Let me just read you
Yeah,
some of this, and then
I'd like to see that and hear that. And then I also found the text of what Schumer had to say. So
oh, perfect,
let's see
perfect.
yeah, I want to hear what he
So
had to
this
say
is
first.
Alito now. Given
Okay.
this is the first draft opinion, so this may not be the final draft, and it's not fair to say if it changes that they changed it because it was leaked or whatever, because they always change. That's why they're called first drafts. The person that people should be mad at right now are the people who leaked this. Politico. Well, Politico just reported it. You can't blame them. It's whoever gave it to Politico that really botched this whole thing. But let's get into it. So after cataloging a wealth of other information having no bearing on the meaning of the Constitution, the opinion concluded with this. He's talking about the 73 decision of Roe. It says the opinion concluded with a numbered set of rules, much like might be found in a statute enacted by a state legislature. So that may not sound egregious to you guys. He gets more stern, but this is him saying they legislated from the bench. Like that's what he's saying. He's like the way that they worded this, they actually added into their opinion a numbered set of rules. He's like, which is something that you don't do. You don't set rules in court rulings like that. It's either constitutional or it's not. And he's like, well, they set all these parameters and all these things. And he's like, it seemed a lot like legislature is what he was saying. And then he says, under this scheme, each trimester of pregnancy was regulated differently. And again, he calls it a scheme. Like again, we're not sensitive to this stuff, but that's a dig. That's a straight dig at the 73 Supreme Court. He's basically saying they created a scheme to make this work, to try and explain this away as being as them having authority here being constitutional. He says each trimester of pregnancy was regulated differently, but the most crucial line was drawn at roughly the end of the second trimester, which at the time corresponded to the point which a fetus was thought to achieve viability, meaning it could live outside the womb. Although the courts acknowledged that the states had a legitimate interest in protecting potential life, it found that this interest could not justify any restriction on pre-viability of abortions, meaning they said, okay, states, yeah, you do have a natural interest under the Constitution in preserving life, but you know what? Not today. Not today. and he kind of mocks him with that. He says the court did not explain the basis for this line, meaning they just said that and didn't explain what they were grounding that on, meaning it's not based in the Constitution. And it's this stuff that scholars and really the left, the prominent leftists, have always feared because they know that this was a made up ruling, that this authority to do this belongs to the states, and that the federal government has no position here. And he notes that one prominent constitutional scholar wrote that he would vote for a statute much like the one the court ended up drafting in 73 if he were a legislator. But his assessment of Roe was memorable and brutal, meaning this was legislation. Again, making the reference saying that they legislated from the bench, and it's never been valid. It's always been egregious. He said Roe was not quote unquote constitutional law at all and gave almost no sense of an obligation to try to be. All right. And again, a reference to the straight activism from the bench. All right. So, like, again, when the Supreme Court gets scathing, they don't curse. They don't get scathing like I get scathing. Like, but this is scathing. Okay, this is not. They're not just overturning it over some technicality. They're telling you that the entire premise of that judgment was far above and beyond the parameters of what the Supreme Court is supposed to be doing. And it was, to me, even abortion aside, it was refreshing to hear, because even this court, when they made that ruling on the vaccine mandate, when they made that ruling, they mentioned the Constitution almost never. Only Gorsuch came out with a separate opinion, and I read them all. And only Gorsuch came out with a separate opinion that basically gave credence to the fact that even if OSHA had been given the authority by Congress, that in and of itself would have been an issue. That Congress even gave them that authority. They never talk like that. Gorsuch was the only one, and now they are. And the last piece here is stare decisis. All right, the doctrine on which cases controlling opinion was based does not compel unending adherence to Roe's abuse of judicial authority. Stare decisis is the idea that because it's precedent, it's the idea that because a previous court ruled on something, that you have to just keep upholding it forever, regardless of how bad the decision is. So what he's telling you in this very professional way is that precedent is not a doctrine on which Casey's controlling opinion was based. Casey was the case in the early 1990s, that was considered to be looked at as the final word on Roe v. Wade. And it was made largely on the premise of stare decisis. Stare decisis. It was made largely on that premise that because the precedent was there, that they were not in a position to overturn it, which is BS. Like, precedents matter, but they're not golden like that, and that's what they're telling you right here. Is like, just because there's precedent, precedent on a bad decision doesn't obligate you to keep following and keep making the same bad decision over and over and over again. Now, here's where he gets it. Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision has had damaging consequences. Far from bringing about national settlement of the issue, Roe and Casey have deepened division. All right, and then that's it. That's the last piece of the quotes that I have. But like, it goes on and on. We posted an article to our Facebook page, and I believe we posted it to our Twitter account as well, where we it was from the Post, and it has that document in it. It has the first draft in the article, in the Post article. But you could find that article easily right now. But like, the whole thing reads that way. The whole thing reads where you could just tell that the court's been, I don't think it took them long to come to this conclusion.
So, George, this essentially puts it back in the hands of the states. Is that correct?
Correct. So now abortion is not illegal, or once, first of all, it's not final. So let's not. That's
Right.
why I put a
Yeah.
question mark on the cover when it said, Roe v. Wade overturned. It was a question mark because this was the first draft of the ruling. But certainly, when you hear this kind of language, right, it's not too far a stretch to say it looks like it's getting overturned. Now, Mississippi
Right.
clearly requested that in their case, so it's not, and what's more damaging, I didn't put this in the quotes, but deeper into the opinion, deeper into the draft, Alito makes mention that the other side was kind of putting up a all or nothing premise to the court, like you can't allow Mississippi without fully overturning Roe v. Wade and Casey. So like, Alito makes mention of that later in the document, and basically says, like, and he's like, all right, so if that's what you're saying, that we can't do that without this, it should bring you comfort to know that we're just going to go ahead and over. I mean, in so many words, it was basically like, all right, well, Mississippi's saying it needs to be all or nothing. You're saying it needs to be all or nothing, and you know what? We agree. It needs to be all or nothing. So here's the all. And obviously it didn't work. It worked in favor, I should say, of Mississippi. So, and then Kathy put up here, as it should be, the states having the power, absolutely, and that's really where this leaves us. So it's not that abortion is illegal. It's says, and Shirley Johnson, oh, in my opinion, just using it for a distraction and to gain control to continue the depopulation. Yeah, Shirley, we talked about the fact that this was likely. I mean, it's not just a distraction, because this has been in the works for a long time. So like it was, as soon as I agree with you that the leaked document is where this is coming in, but there have been states that have just been waiting for a court to be, to have constructionists, a majority of constructionist judges that they could get hold of. And the second they saw that, I mean, this Mississippi law passed almost immediately, right? Almost immediately when the courts went 6-4, or 6-3. I mean, it almost immediately passed this law, because they knew that it was going to get challenged, and they knew that this was gonna, like conservatives everywhere were waiting to do this, and so it's not a total. It's not like the Great Reset set this up as a distraction, I guess is my point. This was coming. This was coming. It's just the document leaking is suspect. That never happened. So the fact that happened means, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, is that it had to be a justice that leaked it. I don't know who else would have access. right?
Yeah, and look, there might be people that are typing it up. I don't know, assistants and so forth. But who knows? We're not there.
Right. No, it's all speculation about
Yeah,
the leak. It's just there's no like this has happened too many times to think that it just happened right now at this time with the 2022 elections coming up, and it's just impossible for me to believe
right.
that like I don't like there's really no coincidental timing in politics anymore that I believe because it
Oh, without a
always
doubt,
happens.
without a
Always.
doubt. What? Yeah. No matter who did it, this whole thing is that leak is part of the plan. And like you
Yeah.
said before, and Shirley was saying, hey, part of it could be that they're looking to rally support since Biden's a dead horse and it looks like they're going to get slaughtered in the midterms. Here's something else for them to focus in on. But the other part that you brought up is equally valid. And that's the part where you were saying that if you have it leaked, then you have time to throw out a few threats to try and
Right.
change the vote. And
Get
so
that reaction going, right?
yeah,
Like just
absolutely. And so
even
I
if you
ended
can't
up
change your
finding what
opinion, you
Schumer
get
had to
people to
say.
trash him.
Here's what Schumer had to say. He said he accused Republicans of taking away fundamental rights, and then he threatened Gorch and Kavanaugh, saying that you release the whirlwind and you will pay the price.
Ah, Kavanaugh, that's what it was.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you for validating me, Jack. I don't sound crazy. It was Kavanaugh. So this is Schumer's second threat to the
yeah,
courts. And
yeah,
and it's friggin' and like this kind of irresponsibility is ridiculous. Like, no, look, conservatives had to sit there in 1973 and take that ruling, even though it had nothing to do with the Constitution. They had to sit there and they had to eat that, and they continued to eat it, fighting all the way, right? So, they're trying to shove the peas in their mouth, but they're smacking them all over the table. But like, they, that didn't get them away from the table. We had to sit there and take that for some, 45 years, and then have it
yeah,
reshoved down your throat in the early 90s just to make sure you're not getting up from that table. And it's like, and the whole time knowing that it is unconstitutional. I mean, I'm sorry, it's
right,
not unconstitutional. It's that the federal government and the courts do not have a play here. Like on issues that are this divisive, on issues that people are torn up and split up so much, like and Alito mentions that in the opinion as well. Is like because this issue is so divisive, and I mentioned some of it in the quote that I put up, but he goes on about the divisiveness, and he's like when the population is this split on an issue, it's not a place for the courts to be able to come in, for the federal courts to come in. This is the type of thing that gets ended by very robust debate and eventually local elections. Like that's how these things get rectified. And to be honest, he didn't even specify local. So and to me it was a little scary because he's kind of leaving the door open that the federal government can somehow legislate this, but like we're going to correct all that beforehand with Article 5, because we're going to make it very clear what the federal government can and can't do, so that these justices don't have to struggle and interpret nearly as much as they do now. And then
yeah. I mean,
Kathy
this
had a
is.
comment.
Oh,
Go ahead. Go ahead. You
no,
first.
I'm looking at the comment.
All right. She says after the leak, right away, you've got people screaming in the streets, women holding up their signs. It definitely seems like they're trying to get the masses, leftist folks, out there screaming, and we know the news will cover it. Yeah, for sure. And trust me, they're going to take camera angles of these people and make it look like there were more people there than there were on January 6th.
Yeah,
Because that's how they roll. They're going to take that like 1,000 people or so, and they're going to friggin' like pack them in perfectly on a street for the photo op and make it look endless with a vanishing point, and like the whole like copy and paste the crowd like all the way down the street and whatever. So they're gonna like how that goes, right?
yeah.
But
Well,
Kathy's right.
they had no business in the first place. It was overreach, federal government overreach,
It was.
and And that's just plain and simple. Like you said, it had nothing to do with whether the Constitution would rule on this. It's whether or not constitutionally the federal government had the power to intervene, and clearly it does not. And that's what they're simply stating, is that the
Yeah,
federal government has no place in this to
that's it.
intervene.
And that's what the left was fearing forever because that's always been true.
Well,
And
you
no matter
built a
how,
it, yeah, it's a house
go
of
ahead.
cards, right? It's a
Yeah,
house of cards.
like everything else the federal government does, right? So, but
Yeah,
like they knew that they knew the left knew. And look, back in '73, there were still legal scholars who were worth their shirt. There were still constitutional scholars, and there are some today. I don't want to say there are none, but it's not like universities like the full invasion of the universities with these psychos hadn't really taken place yet. It started. Like it was
right,
beginning. Like they were injecting all the first ones, and they created the hippie generation, and whatever. But there were still a good number of actual historians and not like woke Marxists and all this. And they all knew that this was not going to, that it would find its day, unless the Constitution, totally became irrelevant at some point. But as long as the Constitution was around, some court somewhere was going to knock this down, and everybody knew that. It was just a matter of how long and when, and now we're living in that history. So personally, I always looked at this issue very simple. You know, if whatever side you're on, you either believe that it's life or you don't. Like if you believe that it's life, then and you're willing to kill it anyway, then you're sick. I don't care whose rights you're trying to protect. Nobody has the right to murder. So if you believe that it's life, if you acknowledge that and still move forward with an abortion, then you're a sick human being. But like in the end, that's the argument they make, is that it's not life. Is that But then you have these people trying to allow it all the way up until, for like, babies are coming out crying and getting beaten with little hands. Like it's sick. It's sick. And like, so look, on a personal level, I'm happy that this is happening on a personal level. On a legal level, I think it also that's the reason why it's happening. You would like to think that it would happen because humanity just doesn't want to kill babies, but in essence, it's happening because, and it's still going to happen, right? Let's not pretend it's done, because
oh yeah,
California, yeah,
California's already,
California, New York,
yeah,
Massachusetts, there's a good, probably a good 20 states or so, 15 to 20 states, depending on how they fall, that are still going to allow it. So it's not gone. But at least now the power is back in the hands of the states where it belongs. So if your state is getting rid of it and it's really driving you nuts and you're really pissed about it, well, then go after your state legislator. Now, if you're happy that your state's doing it, then you too go after your state legislator. We say here all the time, right? State legislators is where the power is. That's where it is. Period. That's where it should be, and that's where it is. And we've gotten away from that, and we've started getting, enamored at presidents and congressmen and senators. Senators aren't even supposed to be elected. Okay. Like the 17th Amendment was created to take power away from you locally. All right. That's what it was. You think, oh, well, we're voting for him. That makes us more powerful. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Imagine, because your local state legislator, that's where the power is. That's where the power is. It's not in that Senate. There was a day, as many don't even know, where the state legislature, Romney, the state legislature of Utah, could pull Romney out of his seat and replace him with somebody else,
because he was
because you
appointed.
showed up at their office and told him you're sick of him doing what he's doing.
Yeah, he was appointed.
They were appointed. That's correct. They
Yes,
were appointed locally
right.
and again, we say this all the time. Your local representatives, right? So like, and this is what people don't understand, Jack, and that's why it drives me nuts. Because like, and it doesn't drive me nuts because I get it. Like I get it. I understand why they don't understand. But like at the same time, it's like, if you're getting as angry as we get, and as angry as many of our followers get, and as angry, then you have to at least take action in the sense of gathering information and understand how things are supposed to work. And the fact that so many Americans, the majority, conservatives too, don't understand. Like conservatives think that it's just about Trump. Let's get Trump. It's like no, no. I mean, yes, that's great if Trump gets in or DeSantis or whoever. It does, but it does. That's not the point. The point is Trump's not the most powerful guy. Like he's not. Yeah. Can he does he have certain executive powers that he could do things, without state legislatures? He does, but he can't do any severe outside of the military, he can't do any severe domestic stuff without state legislatures. Not by our constitution, right? And,
Right.
and, and that's it. Go to your state legislature. You can walk in their office. That's why the system was set up that way. Because you can walk right in there. You can meet your local representative. You're not going to meet, if you live in San Francisco, you ain't meeting Pelosi. That ain't gonna happen. She's not even there. She don't even go to
Last
San
I heard, she
Francisco.
went to the Ukraine.
Yeah, yeah, I know. So
I
that
I,
she can
I was blown
reaffirm
away
that
by
Russia
that.
doesn't leave.
Yeah, I was blown away by that.
No, no, that's right up the alley, right? So she shows up. The media takes their photo ops. Then they talk about how much she's there to help, reaffirm our commitment. And really, what reaffirming our commitment to Ukraine has nothing to do with the Ukrainian people. It has to do with triggering Putin. That's what it has to do. Like
Well, what's
more
funny?
Ukrainians are going to die because of the stance that she's taking.
So here's what else Schumer had to say 2 years ago, and I'll try and find this piece so we could pull it up some other time. But a couple of years ago, Schumer came right out and he said the only reason that we are helping the Ukraine from a military standpoint is for us to defeat the Russians. Nothing about helping the Ukrainians.
Because
It's
there is
stated
nothing.
in black and white. He did an interview.
They slip all the time, bro.
Yeah,
All
if you go
like
back on
and the
them,
thing is, I don't even need him to slip. I know. I knew this from day one because
but
it's
he's over
obvious.
there now with Pelosi saying, "Oh, we care about your people." Well, two
Yeah,
years ago, he said what he really meant. We don't care about your people. We care about beating Russia.
yeah, and really, it's not even. I mean, Russia's just on the dirt. I mean, this is where it gets fuzzy as to the actual motivation to like. There's a million reasons that aside from Ukraine, because Ukraine is definitely not even close to being on the top of the list of any of them, of why they're doing all this, and everything looks like it leads to, and I came to this conclusion after China and Russia released their joint statement on the fact that they're saying they're making a new world order, which right away tells you if you weren't believing that someone else was trying to make a new world order, like they use the terminology, and theirs has autonomous countries, working together, and and so I can't believe. To me, it looks like they're not going after Xi Jinping, but they feel like they can take out Putin. Like they feel like they got a shot at Putin. And then the other side of it is, then they started blowing up all of our food plants and creating these bird flus. And I still think that it's opinion. It's opinion for all of the, but these biolabs, like they have acknowledged that there are pathogens in those biolabs that are being tested and worked on that caused harm to cattle and livestock and other livestock. And sure enough, there are stories, there are reports, I should say, of cattle and livestock having problems right around all the areas where these laboratories exist. So that's been going on for 6 or 7 years. And now we have a global pandemic of bird flu, which of a novel bird flu, right? A new H1N1 virus. So how did it get new? Like, and now the food plants are blowing up. Like all of these things are not happening in a vacuum. They're not just all happening in a vacuum. And then you look at Russia, and this was my point: is that here's the world's largest supplier, largest exporter of fertilizer, right? So if you want to take control of a food supply, how do you go about it, right? Now, it's not like we can't make fertilizer in the US. It's just that we don't. We don't have the infrastructure for it right now. We can build that infrastructure. We can start doing it, but we don't. And who's the number 2 exporter of fertilizer? China. Of course they are. Of course they are. And it's so you're like when you start piecing all those puzzles together, and then you got Bill Gates and his creepy freaking investments, buying up all this farmland, investing in synthetic meat, investing in all these meat alternatives, doing all of these things are not happening. It's not like everything's just happening in a vacuum. And then we got a comment here. Randy Rhodes. Randy Rhodes, is that the real Randy Rhodes? That would be awesome. It says, well, how does Joe do the thing that he's doing to this country if he doesn't have any power? Yeah, Joe's not doing anything to this country. Joe's in the back room playing with his lip. Okay, so like they give Joe a binky and they send him into the corner, and then his handlers, do what they're going to do. So and it's not about them not having any power. I didn't say that the president has no power, and I actually made the point that the president's power is really from in foreign affairs. Domestically, you know, Joe's been losing everything. What's he doing to the country domestically? He tried to do a vaccine mandate. He got shot down. They just knocked everything he tries to do gets shot down.
Other
Now,
than
truth be
executive
told,
orders. So
yeah, they're all
that's the
executive orders, which Trump did too, right?
right. Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean, that's the way of circumventing the fact that they don't have the powers through executive order, which they can get shot down or they're at best temporary until their presidency is over.
right, absolutely, absolutely, and that's look, and did Trump not teach us that? I mean, during Trump's whole
Right.
presidency, I'm telling people like everyone's celebrating. He's coming out with his hands in the air, celebrating. Oh, look what I did! Look at this new. I am writing an executive order that, and I'm trying to tell everybody like number one, he's continuing the creepy tradition started by Obama, where you legislate. Like once Obama passed that creepy freaking healthcare bill that nobody wanted, that's it. He was locked out of his power was shut down. Nobody was voting for anything. So he just started with the executive orders because he passed an enormously highly partisan bill on a completely partisan basis. And so the other side refused to work with him. And then everything was executive order from there on in. Trump comes in right after him. What does he do? Everybody's triggered. He keeps triggering them and then decides, oh, well, they won't work with me. So I'm going to, just do everything through executive order. And then what happens to both of them? Obama stuff got erased when Trump came in. Trump stuff got erased. This is not good for us. You know what I mean? This is not good for us. Like these things are bad. They're
All
bad.
right. Well, again,
Just because
it
comes
goes
from Trump
back
doesn't make
to
it good.
now it goes back to the power being in the hands of the states, and it always
Exactly.
circles back to that. It's we wouldn't have these issues, and we wouldn't be concerned with all of that if the states had the authority that they were.
And they do. They
They
do have
well,
the authority if they would just use it.
well,
Like
yeah,
that's the difference. If they just use it, like just stop taking bribes for education, and the federal government's been slipping. Oh, we got 12 million for your education, but you got to do this, right?
right,
Or you got to
right.
use these textbooks, or you got to do this and that. Hey, there's another 10 million. We got to do this and this. We got to do that. And the next thing you know, our kids are becoming Marxists and freaking, and nobody's there to stop them. Right?
Right.
Our
Well,
kids are becoming Marxists and what? And we all sleptwalk through that. Like
yeah,
all of our generations are guilty of this. All of us.
without
Because
a
we trust.
doubt. Without a doubt, that is on us. We can You can sit and you can point at these kids and you can say whatever you want about them, and you don't have to agree with anything they think. But the fact of the matter is, their mindset exists because we plugged them in behind the Disney Channel and we sent them off to school without understanding what they were doing. And
It's exactly right.
you know,
And nobody, and this is where COVID. There's a great documentary, folks. If you haven't seen this documentary, you need to. It's going to cost you $25. So I'm going to tell you up front, but it's called "Whose Children Are They?" Just Google it. It's going to come up. It's $25, and you can watch it as many times as you want. You watch it, via computer screen or whatever. But like, it's a full breakdown of what they've done in the schools and it was just excellent. I mean, there's not much in it that I didn't already know, but there's something to be said for taking the information and properly organizing it and putting it in a way that's very easy to digest and that is very simple, to understand. And they really do a great job explaining the whole union presence and the early Marxist days, and then citing tons of examples. And one of the things that they brought up, which is why I mentioned this, is that they brought up the fact that oh, I just lost my train of thought. They ah, hold on, I got to put this in. I just lost my train of thought mid swing. The documentary. I'm gonna put this in the comments. So it goes to all four. It goes to Twitch, Rumble, everybody. Um, I never seem to get I get viewers on Rumble, but I don't get any freaking. I don't get any comments. I don't know if that's because something going on with Rumble or documentary is called. So it's whose children are they? So it should be in everybody's comments now. I'm going to see it come up 4 times, which kind of sucks. But they do a phenomenal job of breaking down what. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. So 2020, they point out the fact that 2020 was the turning point. That 2020, like it wasn't just big, and it made me think as well. Like 2020 wasn't just a big deal for the Great Reset and the Davos folks, and for all of these freaks and sociopaths and billionaires who are trying to take over the world. But like Jack, this was a big deal because think about it, right? Parents got a window into the classroom. And that matters, right? Like that was a big deal. Like parents started seeing what's going on, and it was like, well, wait a minute. The hell's this? What do you mean you're teaching my kid that? Like, and then freaking boom, the fire starts. And now I should pull up the Ballotpedia thing. It shows they track school board recalls. And like it tripled from 2020. And I said early on the channel that it was on pace to triple. But I went back and looked at it the other day and it actually did, which I was like not stunned by, but I was like, good for you folks. And parents now are starting to wake up, right? Jack, I can't hear you. You lost your audio.
I killed my audio for a minute because I started to cough. The lights I have on me, I feel like I'm sitting in front of the sun right now, and I'm
Yeah,
dying for a
you look like
water.
Santa Claus.
Yeah, if my wife is watching, please bring me a water. So,
You got like
yeah.
rosy cheeks and stuff. You look like Santa Claus. It's all light on the outsides.
Oh, dude, I'm burning up here. I'm burning.
That's great.
And
God.
so, yeah, I mean, the parents they saw it firsthand. I mean, I know I did. I listened to a few things that some of my daughter's teachers had to say.
Yep.
It was
Here,
insane. It was
Jack, I'm
insane.
gonna I'm gonna try to share my screen here if I can do this successfully
Okay.
and show that stat because it was absolutely and this is really all right. Can you see that?
Yeah.
All right. So so look at this now, right? We've got 2016 33, then 17 18 33 20 29 92.
Wow.
92 in 2021 school boards that parents called for a recall on. So you think and this this takes us to what Bernie Sanders was telling us. Not Bernie. What the hell with Bernie Sanders? All right. So but the fact that this tripled, all right, the fact that this tripled just goes. This is what we talked about early on in our earlier episodes. We've only been around for years, so let's keep it in perspective. But the fact of the matter is, parents saw this, and parents are running for school boards. And this is what Yuri Bezmenov, not Bernie Sanders, was trying to say is that you can't, once these people are demoralized, like once you're like the Soviets saw this as, as they were, when they were still running that show, right? That once you're demoralized, you're done. There's nothing, you cannot get that generation back. But that the only way to do it was to raise new generations who did have American values. All right, so let me. Randy Rhodes says, "Yes, your face is red. It looks like you've been out in the sun."
Well, I
So
actually
Jack's
was
under
out
a
in the
heat lamp right now.
yeah. Well, I'm
He-
under the sun right now, but I was in the sun a lot today. I had some company, and I took them out into the yard, and I set up bales of hay, and we were shooting arrows, and got a little bit of sun that way.
Hey, we got Eric Chastney on. What's up, Eric? How are you, sir? He's on his break at work, giving some support. Appreciate that for sure. Folks, I did put that documentary in all networks, so all of you are getting it. I'm getting most of the comments right now out of Facebook, few out of YouTube, but mostly Facebook is engaged. Um, but that being, and Twitch doesn't seem to be engaged. I don't, the Rumble ones, yeah, Rumble. I only see the comments on the Rumble page. They don't come directly to my source. But hey, guys, this is this stat right here. Let me get back to our normal screen here. Stop sharing. There we go. So, but that stat tells you everything you need to know, and it shows you that parents are waking up, and like I've been teaching my daughter Jackie. I tell you all the time, like I'm teaching her, about these different people and about who Stalin was, right? Who and folks, if you're a parent out there and you're looking for a good dose of history for your kids, there's a documentary that was done by the History Channel called America: The Story of Us, and it's absolutely fantastic. It doesn't sugarcoat stuff. They get right into the slavery, they get right into all of our tribulations, but they also get into all the great stuff as well. And it's just a great balance of the reality of life, of like, yeah, there's bad stuff. Yeah, this guy was amazing. Here's all the great stuff that he did. And here's some of the bad things that came along with that. And they go through all the way from from the first settlers coming, uh, and the tobacco fields being planted, through the signing of the Constitution and the Revolution up to like 2016. It's a phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal documentary. And I've gone through that with my daughter to the point where she goes, she had gone into her school, and I tell this story often. She went to her school and she came back saying, "Dad," she sent me a picture of a commie poster of like all the communist leaders that said "Welcome to the party," and I think I've shown that quite a few times. I might even have it here, but anyway, it's so she showed me this poster in the picture, and she's like, "I don't know the guy on the bottom with the beard," and it was Fidel Castro, and here's the pic. This is the sorry, Jack, it covered you. I didn't mean to do that, but this
That's
is
all
the
right.
poster. This is the poster. So welcome to the party. You got Marx on the floor dancing. You got Lenin with his. Everyone got party hats on. Stalin, Fidel, Mao, all of them. And this is hanging in a suburban classroom, for a sophomore's classroom, and nobody says anything. Like no principal walks in there and says, "What the hell is this?" Like it's nuts, but it's true. But like anyway, the big news today though is Roe v. Wade. So
Yeah.
it does look like it's coming down, right? I don't see it surviving. There's no way. There's no like Jack. I don't know about you, but if they change this draft significantly for in the final, like I expect it to change. So like it may not be as scathing. He may alter the language a little. He may not call them egregious and all these things, but like if it ultimately doesn't end now, after having seen this, if it doesn't end now, then we know the court is political.
Yeah. And you know what? It might go the other way and be more scathing after what Schumer had to say today. that might be their message back to him. Oh, you're threatening us, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know what though? Look, I say this about everybody, I even put it on Elon Musk when he bought Twitter. Like, watch your back. Like in the end, you know, Antonin Scalia like just passed away in a hotel room quietly of natural causes, right? And then we had Clarence Thomas who mysteriously got ill. Like I don't know that these guys are exempt, right? And what what we're gonna have to watch now though is the court stacking, right? They're gonna
Yeah.
try and stack the court. Like you got to think that's their next move, right? Which makes Article 5 even more important, right? Because like this this is exactly what needs to get done, right? Is number one, term limits on Scotus, term limits on all these. I mean, there's an element of it. Like, yeah, I'm saying term limits on Scotus, even though we have a fairly constructionist court right now. But in the end, like, and, I don't know. I'd have to like really look into it as to whether or not, because like the way I remember you told me this, Jack, once, where convention of states, like one of the things that the organization was proposing, not the delegates, was that there be a system where there's 50 judges and they're each state appoints a judge, and then like and I was against it at the time, right? But like
Right.
the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, you know what, that actually makes sense. Like that actually makes sense. Like the more I look and I think of a system like that, it makes because in the end, no matter how the court gets decided, there's I'd rather have 50 judges, I guess, than have a president try to stack a court, or even Congress or whatever. I don't even know the process that they would go through to try and stack the court, but it's clearly possible. And it's like I'm not trying to have this rat race of justices coming in like when like nine is enough, like because there's no, and I think where it comes from is there's nothing that says there's nothing in the Constitution that says there will be nine justices. So like
Right.
it's not in stone. They could legislate a waiver. I don't know. I don't even know how that process would work, but I know that while we're at it, right, like while we got the Constitution on the table and we got the feather pen out and we're adding term limits and balancing the budget and doing things like that, may as well put in something to stop them. I mean, I would think that would fall under the government overreach topic, by stacking the courts. That's what I was saying earlier. Like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they'd be allowed to bring it up in this session, right? Like when we finally get to call the convention, I'm not
Right.
sure they'd be allowed to,
Yeah, no,
because
they wouldn't be allowed to because it has to be written up by all of the 34 states, and right now we got 20,
yeah. But
and
the question
it's
is, does it fall under government overreach? Does the
oh
idea of stacking the court fall under government overreach? Like, I would think it would.
yeah,
Like
I
I
and
know a lot of people, like myself included, that wants to overturn the 17th Amendment, but that's not something that's going to get discussed in this first round of convention.
no,
Like that's
no,
just not on the table because it's
we
not on
just
the
need to get
topic.
one under our belt, just one,
Right. No,
just
honestly, here's the thing with convention of states, right? You get one done, right? When we call, and we're gonna call this like it's gonna happen. Like before the Great Reset gets to be implemented, right? Like people don't really get it. There's still, believe it or not, a lot of people that don't get it yet. There are still a lot of people who, because I mean, let's face it, right? I follow stuff, right? I follow this stuff, and it was only it was only about a year ago that I first heard some of the details about what they talked about in the meeting the year before. You know what I mean? So but there are people who have been on this right away, but the majority of people still think that this is like lunacy. Like they still think that this is conspiracy theory. It's like once you see, right, you can't unsee, right? Like
right.
that's now becoming our motto. I may even change the whole "we're all in this together" and make it that because it's kind of true, right? Like once you
Right.
see everything, like even look, there's an educator who I know, and she's an assistant principal, and she has forever, it's not that she forever didn't acknowledge what I was telling her. Like she's one of those 40% that I've been talking about on the different episodes where like they know, and like they know what's going on, but they don't do anything because they just want to be left alone, sort of thing. But she's always been someone who understood and got it, but like never really nothing personalized to her, right? Nothing hit home. Like it was always those are one offs, you know. Like I'd be pointing out, like the book in Jersey, The King and the King. It's like, oh, what school does that? My school doesn't do that. Well, oh, well, what about this? What about in Loudoun County? And what about these school board recalls? What about like are they all like is this all one offs? Like there were 93 school board recalls across the country last year. Like how could you call it a one off, right? Still, there was because she's an educator and it's not happening as much in her school, so she's
Right.
not identifying with it and understanding that it is happening in a major way across the country. But now that person went to an interview and they told her to make sure she read. I don't have it with me, but like there it was she was showing it to me. They told her to make sure you read X, Y, and Z. This professor, and so she's reading it, and immediately like is thinking of me because in this literature that she's asked to read before she gets an interview for a principalship, right? They're talking about um, what is it? Universal basic income, like all the metrics, like the ESG scores, and like they're talking about all of that in this and this is just for an interview, but it's clear that that school right now is saying to her like you need to agree with this. Like it's not like just read it. It's like we want you to read this so you know what we are,
Yeah, get
and
on
if you
board.
don't notice it, you got the job. If you come
Right.
back and say like what the hell is this, we're gonna have to let you go. Yeah, and that's real talk. Like that really happened. So like, and it's something that now has like enhanced our relationship because now she sees, right? And from now on, and this is what I mean when I say once you see, you can't unsee. It's it's you everything she sees now going forward because she may not even have thought anything of all that stuff if it wasn't for me always talking about it beforehand and her thinking that it's not really happening and then being told this is what we need you to if you're going to lead this school you need to be on point with all these topics.
This is what you need to think, feel, and believe. It's, you know, you are not your own individual. We're not hiring you to be your own individual, have your own character, and bring your flavor to the
Right.
table. This is the flavor that we're going to feed everybody, and you're going to administer it.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, and that's
And there is a
corporate. That's
local
corporate
principal.
America too. You know,
Well, corporate America has to abide by the ESG standards, and that's
without a
you
doubt.
know
Yeah,
and that's a bigger deal. Like that's actually almost as concerning as what's going on in the schools
yeah.
because so like understand how much they control, right? Like in the end, it's like they get to you get out of school, right? So they get you early on, right? Early on, they're sexualizing these kids, demoralizing them, teaching them. They've removed God from the classroom in its entirety over the most bogus. And this is what I would like to see a court decide on church and state, because that has been so grossly abused for.
Hmm.
For as long as it's been around, I mean, not as long as it's been around, but it's been grossly abused since at least the 50s, if not further back. Like that whole premise of church and state had nothing to do with whether or not there's a 10 commandments in front of a court building or whether or not, some other religious symbol or a school is teaching religion. It had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with the government not writing laws based strictly on theocracy. That's all it was. That's all it was. Is that it was a protection to stop the country from turning into a straight out theocracy, so that freedom of religion was preserved, not
Well,
so that religion was completely removed. It's the exact opposite.
yeah. I mean, we've come a long way in terms of time, but the a large segment of our population that immigrated here from Europe did so for religious freedom because of the persecutions that they were facing exercising their religion in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's Kathy again. She says, "What you're saying about people saying it's a one-off is so true. I have friends that always say no teachers really teach that. Say it, believe it, etc." And I'm like, "Are you blind, deaf, or what?" Yeah, and that's the thing. It's plausible deniability, right? That's the way I see it. Like they're playing the three monkeys, and they're just gonna sit there and ignore them. Sooner or later, though, something happens that affects them directly, and then when that happens, it gets real. But like they don't want to believe, and really, it's just people don't want to believe. And she says that's why once you finally get it or see it, you can't unsee it, right? And then it's very liberating. It is. It is. It's very liberating because in the end, these terms, because they've been speaking in this BS code for a long time. Like, and we just didn't know the buzz. Like they make up buzzwords, and then
It's,
they
it's like
use
it's like curry. Once you smell it, you can't unsmell it.
it.
You know that smell.
I
You
love
walk in the
curry, man.
room, that's curry,
Yeah, and I love it.
right?
I love curry, and I have
And
the
I
privilege
love
of
curry
getting
too,
some
but you can't
home cooked
unsmell
Korean
curry.
food that has many of those characteristics as well. And like kimchi is that way for sure. And like and in the end, yeah, once you see though, like once you understand their terminology, once you understand the way that they talk, the words that they create, they make up, like stakeholder capitalism, like that's a made up word. They made that up. And then the media goes and regurgitates it until it becomes a thing. And this has gone on. This I woke up maybe about 15 years ago. It was right when the war on women was starting, right when all us men started the war on women, which of course never happened. But in the end, that was the narrative, right? And I forget who it was. It was some conservative. I think it was Rush Limbaugh. I never listened to Rush though, which is why I'm kind of doubting that. But it could have been because he comes on national broadcast. But anyway, the point is they put together a collage, and the point they were making is everybody operates on buzzwords, and like all you really have to do is know what the buzzwords are, and then you'll know what their next move is. And he would pick them up, and the war on women was still young, it was still early, and he went ahead and just like put this huge collage of like 40 or 50 different newscasters, like in different contexts, talking about the war on women that's just started. And that's it. Like that's it. They decided there was going to be a war on women. They sent the word out. Everybody started using the buzzword, and they do it with everything. Like they do it with everything. All of these little buzzwords that they come out with, and then they just keep repeating them and repeating them and repeating them. And the next thing you know, people think it's a thing. Like they think it's a
Yeah.
thing.
Hey, George, this is extremely dangerous to our democracy,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Remember, right? That one,
Yeah.
right? With a whole, that was one of the best compilations ever, and we
That was
covered
great.
that, right? We
Yeah,
covered that, and it was actually Sinclair, I believe it was,
it was.
that did that, which was a conservative
Yeah, they're
network.
conservative syndicate. Yeah.
And people don't know that. A lot of people don't realize that wasn't. Everyone assumes that was like the CNN types and all this because they see ABC and NBC, but those are all affiliates. It's really complicated. I remember trying to understand how that whole affiliate thing works out, but like all those things round up to Sinclair. And Sinclair is generally, I mean, obviously the mainstream media calls them the what was it? Or the rest of the mainstream media calls them the extremist,
Oh,
right
yeah.
wing, media. But they are fairly conservative minded media, and that went out as a letter from leadership for everybody to read. And even the newscasters were interviewed later saying, yeah, it was creepy. Like it was creepy having to do, but they did it, right?
Yeah, they did
Like
it.
at
They
what point
collect
did
their
they
paycheck.
step in, right? At what point did the newscasters turn it up and say, and say we're not doing this anymore? There've been
They
a
don't.
few. There were a
There's been
few,
a few. There's
but
been a
like
few.
when and who's the one? Was it Brian Jennings who like on his way out the door, like made a very cryptic statement that was it Brian Jennings? I don't remember.
I don't
He,
remember.
he retired and he was like on his way out the door. He made this like exit speech, like on the air, like it was a broadcast. When I say on his way out the door, I mean figuratively. And he made this speech about like how, it, it was very cryptic. So it wasn't like, but he definitely said that you definitely walked away from it feeling like he no longer believed the messaging of the left and that he felt it was destructive. Like he was finally, and maybe he saw it a lot earlier and just hung on, for his career or whatever. But like he felt compelled to make the statement on his way out in his last episode, and it was just when you heard it, it was very like non-committal, but it was also very not him. You know what I mean? From what you knew of him as a personality, like it was not
Right.
him.
Right.
And I think little by little, people are gonna wake up and smell the coffee. So there's no buzz. My buzz phrase: defund the media. Yeah, for sure, we should defund the media. And look, there's still a lot of good media out there, and I don't think people realize that because we've been desensitized to not believe anybody. But like when you start getting good at validating articles and validating things, you'll start to come across some organizations that are out there or some individuals like Michael Yohn. Michael Yohn, I've seen that was the war correspondent that I had on that one show early on.
Yeah.
I spent quite a bit of time looking into his stuff. He's legit. Like that dude's legit. Andy Ngo, right? His reporting on Antifa and stuff. Again, the
Yeah.
stuff's
Epic
legit.
Times.
Epic Times, another one. Like the Epic Times, I validated a long time ago, and really where they really like sealed the deal for me was with their COVID documentary. They came out. I want to say it was April. It was like April of 2020. It was right after the freaking thing started and became a thing, and they put out a Wuhan lab documentary breaking down how it all came from the lab. And I watched it in its entirety. I ripped it because as soon as I watched it, I was like, "Oh, they're going to get rid of this. They're not leaving this up." So I ripped that one. But like, it came back up now, of course, because now it's so you can actually watch it. But when you watch it, what should blow you away is the timing, and because nobody has better reporting on China than the Epic Times.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. They're
Nobody.
outstanding.
They started in China. They have an organization in China. Like ABC doesn't have an organization in China. Nobody has an organization in China. Epic Times has an organization in China because they left one there when they left to come here, and now that organization is constantly being chased and blown up. Like so, they're like constantly on the move. But the point
Yeah.
is, they have the sources. Like they have people that'll reach out to them, and give them these ins. So like that's how I latched onto them at first. But then I started realizing all of their reporting was legit. Like they're
Yeah.
and no one will know because they're as soon as you go legit, you become a fringe right wing conspiracy site.
Well, but you know what? Your point is valid. There are legit organizations, but it's up to the individual to really make that determination by
Yep.
validating their sources. I mean, I'd love to say that, we could find somebody whose personality we like and identify with. We can be able to trust them, but it's too old school anymore. You really, really need to go in, dig in, and validate what they have to say because, look, friends lie to each other. So why wouldn't some personality that's appears to be very genuine, be out there and spreading misinformation? You just can't latch on to somebody because you can identify with them. You got to validate it. You just
Right.
have to.
Yeah, no doubt. But
So
like when I talk about the Epic Times, like I spent like I spent months validating this
no, I
organization.
know you did. I
Like
know you did.
there does come a point, like if someone's hitting a home run every time you throw them a fastball, you could start to expect that they're going to hit a home run when you start to throw them a fastball.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
like, that doesn't mean that they'll never f it up or even go down the wrong path entirely, because everybody is subject to that. But like at the same time, you know, I have a million more times trust in the Epic Times and what they report as being accurate than I do in anything, including
Right.
Fox, but like than any of them. Like after that Newt Gingrich incident, Fox just went off the chain for me. Like it was clear that there's infection in Fox as well.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could think about it like, they're employees of you. the citizen, right? And would you have an employee that you would just go leave unchecked? And how do you validate whether or not they're doing a good job for you? And then ultimately, you'll have your more trusted employees because
Right.
you have validated their work and you know that they're authentic, right? So look at these people as, their job as your employee is to dig up information and provide to you the honest truth. But until you know they're doing that, then you have to put them on watch, right?
Yeah. Well, but
So
that's the point, right? And Cat,
yeah, it is.
just
It
thank you,
is.
Joe. Jack and I argue about this often. Some people have earned my trust. So, and yes, some people should earn your trust. Some people, look, there's only you're not gonna you gotta go through the process, right? So you find, you get it. Like right now, I'm telling people about Epic Times. So if I'm telling you about Epic Times, then that's a good starting point, right? That doesn't mean go throw your heart at Epic Times. That means that's where you go in yourself and then you validate Epic Times. But at least you're not going down. At least you have a good starting point. Like I can tell you that going to you're going to validate Epic Times. You're going to validate them, and when you start looking up their stuff and checking their sources and things like that, you're going to realize they're legit. And like, but I'm not telling you to just trust me on that. I'm telling you to do it yourself. But I'll save you time, right? And you'll find somebody else like me who has done the work for you and has validated it. So and hopefully you do the same thing and you get the same result. And then what that does is it gives you a news source because that's a big deal, right? I have tons of followers who are like, dude, the first time I hear something, when you tell me. And that's like crazy to me because I'm definitely not even on the channels and the things like that. But what they're saying is they don't really get onto a lot of different YouTube channels and a lot of different whatever. Like they happen to have subscribed to us, and so they're not getting it from the mainstream media, and their social circle is not exactly conservative in some cases. So they're like, we're on our own. And then I find you, and then you give me some info, and it's either now I go down the rabbit hole, which is what I encourage everybody to do: is go down the rabbit hole, go down. We're past the days of saying don't go down the rabbit hole. You're going to bug out at some of the stuff you find, and yeah, a lot of you're going to find a lot of crazy stuff in the rabbit holes too. But the problem is they're throwing all the good stuff in there as well because they don't want you to go down and see it. So if you don't go down there and be able to separate all the crazy stuff, okay, perfect example. There was a QAnon video that was pretty detailed, and this was back in the very early days of Q, and I was still kind of intrigued by it, and I'm trying to validate it, and I'm literally going through this documentary, and I got my laptop out, I got my beer next to me, and I'm just I'm pausing it like every time they make a claim, I'm pausing it, and I'm going and I'm looking it up and I'm researching. It took me like 6 hours to get through the whole 2 hour video or whatever. And for a good portion of it, they did a lot of stuff on the child sex trafficking and stuff. So for a good portion of it, there was a lot of validation to what they were saying.
I think I
And
remember
then they
this.
went off the rails.
I think I remember this, George, because I watched it and I believe I recommended this one to you, and
You might
you
have.
really picked it apart.
You might have. Yeah, I'm telling you.
Yeah,
I said because that's how I operate, right?
yeah.
Like
It
I'm
was
gonna
funny.
watch this thing, but like it kept me engaged because now mind you, if they would have did the ending first, I would have never made it to the end.
Right.
I would have
Yeah,
just
the
been
ending
like,
was,
these people are
yeah, it was off
crazy.
the
There's
rail
no
time
way.
travel stuff, right? That's the one you're talking about.
Yeah, like yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
like, because like they're getting into all this child trafficking stuff, and they're quickly flashing articles, but I'm like pausing the video, looking up the keywords in the articles, looking up the titles of the articles. They do exist. They were legitimate. A lot of them were a lot of the child porn stuff and whatnot, child trafficking was checking out. So it was intriguing me. And now I'm starting to think this is again the very early days. I just heard about Q for the first time. Now my take on it is Q's probably a Russian operative or some foreign high up trolling us. Like because they too would know all the things that Q apparently knew. You know what I mean? Like world leaders know all this shit about each other. So there's nothing. Someone's probably laughing or send out another one. Yeah, like the problem with that movement was that the anons was not like the Q drops had their elements of it's very cryptic, so you could always we cannot confirm or deny, right? Which is exactly how you would troll somebody, right? But then the anons would go off on these tangents, and like this one video. So after I'm all into it and the child trafficking's checking out, and I'm finding these like pedophilia foster care things with, and they existed, dude. They had like pedophilia logo, like those FBI pedophilia logos from that FBI document that everybody's circulated. Those symbols were in like all these foster child logos and stuff. Like since then, they've changed them. Like since then, and it's probably since that thing went viral. But like there were like you went to their website, it was right there, like that triangle with the freaking thing, and not the all-seeing eye, but the man boy symbol or whatever. Like
Right.
if the FBI documented what all the symbols meant, like this guy's loves little girls. This guy was disgusting. But there were actual child care and foster agencies who had these symbols. It was disgusting. But then they're like, by the way, JFK Jr.
He's coming back.
is going to save us all. And by the way, and they're showing you this like poster of him like from the past, like saying he went from the future back to the past and is now coming back to the future again to save us all. And they found this dude who looks like nothing like him, and they're like, this is exactly what he would look like if he were older. And I was just like, all right. I'm like, I can't believe they punked me like this, and I watched this whole thing just to have it end like this. But that's exactly how it ended, and it was terrible. But you know what though? It was worth going down the rabbit hole. Like that happens. Sometimes you go down these rabbit holes, and you know what? I learned a lot about the pedophilia thing, from watching that, because it sent me on a trail that taught not so much from the video, but from like what I learned from researching that topic. That you know what? It was worth it in the long haul. But like that's
Yeah.
how you do it, right?
Well, to your point, when you go down the hole, there's a lot of junk and
Go
there's
down.
nuggets. You gotta
Yep.
you gotta do the research to find the nuggets. But once you start finding them and you start connecting those dots, it's a wake up call. Hey,
Yeah.
we're over the hour, and I was thinking
Yep.
maybe we
Yeah.
we
And we're
should end
way
this.
off Roe v. Wade. So like,
Yeah, we should end it in a celebratory way, because
yeah.
that's really why we're here. I mean, the celebration. Let's not, pop the cork on the
And it,
champagne early. I mean, after all, somehow Trump lost, but this is the step in
No,
the
it's
right
definitely a
direction.
win. Look, man. When this gets finalized and when this comes out, there are millions and millions and millions of babies that will not die, that
Yeah,
now have a voice, right? That now have a voice. So whenever even if it was one baby, it's worth celebrating, right? Because they're babies.
amen.
So and here you Hannity and Ben Shapiro are talking. Yeah, everybody's talking about this. This is the story. I went nuts to get on this just because it was it was so hot. I mean, there's only so much you could talk about it though, which is why we ended up drifting a little bit. But in the end, for those that jumped on late, like this clink a beer. If you're on the right side, clink a beer, because this is a good time. You know, I would be absolutely stunned if it went off the rails from here. Like after reading, if you haven't read that thing, we quoted some of the key quotes earlier in the video. But go back. You can go to the link that we have on Twitter. We have another link on Facebook where you can read the actual. It's in the post article that we posted. They put the actual draft in there, and you'll listen to it. There's no way that they're not overturning Roe v. Wade. There's no way.
Yeah, agreed.
So all right.
Agreed.
So with that being said, Jack, I know you've been sitting in the sauna. And
Hey, you know what? I'm losing weight.
we've been getting comments. I put up one or two, regarding how red you look and how like how there's this. I think there's a Save the Jack fund going on, and
Yeah, I know. Go fund me. Yeah.
what's that?
Well, I make it easy on my makeup artist.
Yeah. So what do you do? Just get red. Just get a lot of red.
Yeah, maybe it's Maybelline or maybe it's really hot lights.
Yeah. All right, man. So we got to get Jack some fans. Let him go and cool off a little bit. Everybody,
Yeah.
thank you for taking the time to watch. This one went a little long, but the earlier portions on topic. So definitely check that out for the conversation that was mostly about Roe v. Wade. Then we kind of went off down the rabbit hole a little bit, But for that, we'll be back on soon. We're coming on with some more videos later this week. So we'll see you then. Jack?
Take it easy, Georgie.
And like that,